So in this subject, we're going to understand how Karaite Israelites, Jews, keep the mitzvot and how to understand figurative versus literal. Now, from our rabbinical brothers and sisters, or Orthodox brothers and sisters, which I have deep respect for, this is in no way a video to disrespect them in any way, so I want to state that before I begin. If you're an Orthodox brother or sister, I deeply, truly respect the traditions of the sages, and this is in no way a video to attack. It's just coming from a Karaite point of view to understand more figurative or literal from our understanding. So, that being said, let us begin. When can we differentiate between literal or figurative? Let's use an example. Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5. It says, "You must love Yehovah your Elohim with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might." Now, what does it mean with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might? Does it mean that you literally have to give or sacrifice your heart or your life, your soul, give it out? Does it mean that you must sacrifice yourself to do this? What is it talking about? It's talking about deep devotion to Elohim, to God. With your heart, which is passion within, your soul, with whatever's in you, every time you breathe in. For example, you wake up in the morning, you thank Elohim for another day of life. Your heart is a devotion to the study of the scripture and living according to Torah. Not just keeping the commandments, because anybody could do that. It's not impressive. And we've learned that. There are many, many cults and sects and groups that keep the Torah. Anybody can do that. It's not impressive. But what do you do with the Torah observance? Do you live it in your daily life? Do you care about the poor and the widows and the strangers and do things to help others? Okay, when we look further, it says, "And you will love Yehovah Elohecha with all your heart," that's yours, "and all flesh yours, and all your might." When we look at this statement, we see that there's a lot of love mentioned with Yehovah. And we're to love him with all our heart, soul, might, and strength. We recognize this even in English as a figure of speech. It has the expressed meaning of total devotion, like I mentioned before, because it is an idom. It is not literal, but metaphoric. Other places where this combination is used is in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 29, where it says, "But if you search there for Yehovah Eloheka, you will find him, if only you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul." Very, very powerful verse here. And you who's watching, who searched for Yehovah, and you found him, welcome home. This is a prophecy in the Torah that many who are lost would find Yehovah. And there would always be a righteous remnant, but those who were lost would find Yehovah. Okay. This is very similar to what we read earlier, like I mentioned earlier, except with all your might and strength was not used. Also in Deuteronomy chapter 10 verse 12 it says, "And now, O Israel, what does Yehovah Eloheka demand of you? Only this, to revere or fear Yehovah your God, to walk in his paths, to love him, to serve Yehovah Eloheka your God with all your heart and all your soul." Again, it is the wholeness of devotion to Yehovah, the Creator. Devarim chapter 11 verse 13. "If then you obey the commandments that I enjoin upon you this day, loving Yehovah Eloheka, your God, and serving him with all your heart and all your soul." Serving him with all your heart and all your soul. Again, it is the wholeness of devotion within, in our hearts and our souls, our whole being, our heartbeat, our breath, what is inside of us, how we live, our actions in the outside world, not just in our bubble of Torah observance, but going out there and living according to the Torah. This is with all your heart and all your soul. The difference here is ka. In the singular versus him, which is plural, but the meaning is overall the same. Deuteronomy chapter 26 verse 16 says, "Yehovah Eloheka commands you this day to observe these laws and rules. Observe them faithfully with all your heart and all your soul." Again, the same terminology. Anyways, I have page after page of the same thing. All your heart and all your soul. It's complete devotion, okay? So where does this come in with the whole Karaite and Orthodox or rabbinical Judaism conflict of figurative and literal? It really is not a conflict. It's an understanding, okay? So for example, let's see here. Here's one example. It says in Jeremiah chapter 4 verse 4, it says, "Open your hearts to Yehovah. Remove the thickening about your hearts, O men of Judah, inhabitants of Jerusalem, lest my wrath break forth like fire." Okay, as you can see, the word here for heart is used many times in Tanakh as a metaphor for the mind, our attitude, losing faith, etc., etc. We can see then that in the verse we looked at the word heart can also be figurative, like I mentioned. Since the previous verse 5 was using figurative language, it is in no stretch to see that it can continue. Next, Deuteronomy chapter 6 verse 7, it says, "You shall sharpen your sons and speak of them," the Torah, the commandments, "when you sit in your house and when you walk in the way and when you lie down and when you rise." Again, it says sharpen, sharpen. The word shinan or shanan is very interesting, and that their usages in the Tanakh is most often as sharp or sharpen. Using this instead of impress, we can see that we are to sharpen our sons or teach them, meaning to teach them, instruct them, sharpen. Like you've heard of sharpen your mind. Sharpen your minds. Make your mind sharp. The same terminology in the Hebrew is used when talking about our children, that we should sharpen our children in the ways of the Torah. Now again, Torah means instruction. It means, for example, in the root of Torah is or. Or, the root word means light. So it's not only our instruction, okay? It is light to our instruction. So the light is for our life, to live by this light and instruction. Psalms 140 verse 4, here's another great example. "They sharpen their tongues like serpents, spiders. Poison is on their lips." Again, it's not literal, it's figurative. They sharpen their tongues. They didn't literally sharpen their tongues, although there's some people that do this kind of crazy stuff. This is not what he's talking about. Isaiah chapter 5 verse 28, "Their arrows are sharpened." Shanonim in Hebrew. Shanonim means sharpened. "And all their bows are drawn. Their horses' hooves are like flint. Their chariot wheels are like the whirlwind." Many, many figurative statements to explain case. Let's see. Psalms chapter 45 verse 6 in Tehillim. "Your arrows sharpen." Shanonim, again in Hebrew, sharpen. "Pierce the breast of the king's enemies. Peoples fall at your feet." So, shanonim, sharpen, is not used literal, but figurative here. We can see it being used to reflect the sharpening of some object as well. It can also be used metaphorically, for example, 140 verse 4, as we saw and read just recently, and also in Devarim chapter 6 verse 7, which we also read, okay? So, let's connect this to what is written, for example, okay? This is what, for example, Pharisaic Judaism uses to literally bind around their arms and wrap it or put it upon their forehead. Here we go. Devarim chapter 11 verse 18. "Therefore impress, sharpen my words upon your very heart. Bind them," here we go, "bind them, ukshartam in Hebrew, as a sign on your hand, and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead." This is why rabbinical Jews wear the phylacteries and they wear the headdress as well, because they take this literally. But again, within that same very verse, it also says, "My words upon thy very heart." Now, it does not mean that we're going to go get surgery and write it upon our heart, literally. So Karaites will look at the same verse and say, why are you taking only those two verses? What about the heart? Okay? And I can go on and on, but I'm not going to make this a very, very long video. But in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 3, we see, "Let fidelity and steadfastness not leave you. Bind them," kashrem in Hebrew, kashrem, "about your throat." Your throat. Write them on the tablet of your mind. Tablet of your mind and your throat. Two different ways. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 21. Tie them over your heart always. Bind them, kashrem again in Hebrew, around your throat. Proverbs chapter 7, verse 3. Bind them on your fingers. Bind them on your fingers. Write them on the tablet of your mind. So there's many, many references to write them on this. Bind them around your fingers, your arms, put them around your head. There are many, many examples of Joshua chapter 4, verse 6. This shall serve as a symbol, oat, among you in time to come, and when your children ask, what is the meaning of these stones for you? So it is both physical sign, meaning the Israelite children who were that generation would literally see this sign physically. But in future generations, we know that we're not able to see these things because these things do not exist in front of us right now. So therefore today, it is a mental reminder. Numbers chapter 17, verse 25. And Yehovah said to Moshe, put Aaron's staff back before the pact to be kept as a lesson, ot in Hebrew, to rebels, so that their mutterings against me may cease lest they die. So they see this physical object and they'll know this is from Yehovah. We will keep our mouths shut and not disrespect Elohim, Eloheinu. So therefore, we do not have these holy things today. So therefore, to us, this is metaphoric today. Okay? So we see many, many examples. I can go on and on. There are many passages where, again, it says, place my Torah in your inward parts. In the Messianic age, it says that Elohim will write the Torah upon our hearts and put it in our inward parts. Many, many examples of these things. We are not to take everything literal or physical, or figurative. Now, some people can choose to keep certain things literal, and that's okay. That's what Orthodox brothers do. So we don't have no quarrel against it. We're not condemning, God forbid. We're not trying to attack anything. We're just saying the reason why we don't believe that these are traditions that we must keep, because there's a lot of problem when you read throughout Tanakh. There are many examples that are all over the place of writing the Torah or keeping this on your heart, your inward parts, your arms, your legs, your back, your head, your forehead, your bones, your cheeks, your throat. It's all over the place. So we have to use rationale, deep study of the entire scriptures. Again, people will take the words I say wrong. No, I don't mean it's too simplistic. I'm saying, yes, it's a holy reading of understanding. You must study carefully, study the entire Tanakh. And this is what I wish my rabbinical brothers who are watching would do more. Study Tanakh thoroughly. The answers are there. They claim that it's not there. Now, Orthodox Judaism claimed throughout history that Parushim, Pharisees of old, would always say that the Torah, the whole Hebrew scriptures, the whole thing, is like a skeleton. You're missing the meat, the blood, the flesh. It's incomplete. And without the Talmud, the Mishna, and the Kabbalah, and all the traditions, you're not whole. You got to have the whole thing to put together the perfect form. The written and the oral Torah. Whereas Karaites, we say, the Torah was written. It was written. And we can understand the Hebrew scriptures, the entire Tanakh, or Kara, by deep study, studying on a daily basis. Every day studying, carefully, every single day. Deep study, thorough search and study of scripture in context. I hope this was helpful. Shalom.